Welcome to the Modern Husbands Podcast, where any combination of Dr. Ross, Christian, and Brian hosts national experts who share ideas to manage money and the home as a team. Join your fellow modern husbands and have links to our podcasts, articles, and other resources to manage money and the home as a team sent to your inbox every couple of weeks by subscribing to our newsletter at modernhusbands.com. Today, we're thrilled that our guest is Yanely Espinal. Yanely is the author of Mind Your Money, the host of Financially Inclined from Marketplace, and Director of Educational Outreach for Next Gen Personal Finance. In 2015, she started Miss Be Helpful, a YouTube channel that now has over 4 million views, to help others learn the money skills she never learned in school. Today, Yanely will share her success stories, overcoming over $20,000 in credit card debt, her new book, Mind Your Money, and how her partner supports her as a high achiever. Enjoy the show.
Yanely, all three of us are thrilled that you could make it. Thanks so much for making it today.
Yes, I'm glad we can make this happen. I love what you all are doing. I'm so here for it.
And we love what you're doing and the difference that you make, not just in your profession and your content area where you're a clear expert in the financial education world, both as a content creator and as an author. Newly released book, Mind Your Money, which Christian has read. I read it, loved it. Dr. Ross is going to read it. So for our listeners, we're going to get into that. But Yanely is much more than just a financial education expert. She's a trailblazer in her career. She has a great partner in a 21st century relationship where they all are nothing but smiles and happiness. And so there's a lot to dive into here for our listeners who like to learn a little bit more about how to manage money in the home as a team. So I know we have quite a few questions, and I know Christian was itching to begin because there's been a couple things that he's always wanted to ask Yanely. Christian, go ahead. Why don't you take us away?
Indeed, my friend Yanely, good to see you. Thank you for joining us on the Modern Husbands Podcast. Would love to know, and I know our listeners would love to know, what and when caused you to want to start getting your money right and start changing your habits and mindsets about money?
Oof. I think the seed probably was planted at a much younger age than when I actually started to take action towards changing. But, I remember as a kid, like I would watch my mom and dad, and they had a very traditional approach to their marriage, where my father was the one who, earned the money. And so he got to manage the money and make decisions. And my mom was at home with all the kids. I'm one of 9 kids. So there were a lot of kids, and she didn't often have the chance to work outside the home because she was always taking kids to and from school, picking up kids from practice, etc. So she was kind of always taking a back seat when it came to finances. And I always witnessed her asking my dad in a lot of ways, like for permission to do things with money or to get access to the money that he would make. So back to school, she would have to ask him for enough money to go buy the school supplies and wait for him to approve whatever budget amount she needed, and then also provide her with the cash so that we could then go school shopping. And I watched this in so many different ways, and was like, it just made me cringe that I had to keep watching her wait around and kind of constantly beg for money and not feel that she had any control, autonomy, or power over the financial decision making in the household. And so I think that was like the early little seeds planted. And I don't think they really sprouted until I finally started, making money on my own. And I didn't really know how to use it the right way. I didn't know how to be savvy with my money or what to do with it. So I just would spend it on things that I felt like I was deprived of growing up. So clothes and shoes that I wanted, trips I wanted to take. And eventually it caught up with me. And I sat down one day to run the numbers and look at my credit card statements. And I think that was the moment, like the aha moment, when I saw the interest fees adding up on all of my different credit card statements. I mean, it was like thousands of dollars. And I was just like, I can't believe that I'm taking thousands of dollars from my bank account and just flushing it down the toilet pretty much, because that's what I'm doing by just giving it away to these credit card companies. And in that moment, I just decided, like, I want to change the way that I approach money, and I want to feel like I'm in control of it, and I want to never pay interest fees again in my life. That was probably the moment for me.
I mean, I think that it's so common of a thing that you get your first like paychecks, you start wanting spending on yourself, and there's no one to stop you. at first,
Right.
right?
Right.
And if you didn't learn about financial literacy and what interest rates were and how they're affecting you, and especially the compounding effect of that, right? If you didn't
Right.
learn it from your parents, if you didn't learn it from all of the great like educational content that we have now out there, but if you're not even utilizing that, which so many people aren't even aware that it's there,
Right.
then you kind of fall into these traps, right?
Definitely.
But at
Definitely.
least you had that epiphany moment.
Yeah. I mean, it took a long time to reach that moment, and I think it was really frustration. Like I
But
just
you're still
couldn't.
young, so it can't be that.
No, it
A
was,
long
and
time.
listen, I'm glad it happened when it did because I was in my mid-20s. But what I will say is it was like almost 10 years of being a hot mess before I finally said, why don't I like look at my credit card bill for once? Because I remember that I would get my credit card statements as PDF attachments and emails. I was like paperless on all my accounts. So I would just get the email saying your statement is ready for this month. I would click on the PDF, open the statement, and look at look at two things. One was the minimum amount due, and the other was the due date. And that's it. That's all I cared about. But there was so much more context to that statement. All the charges, I never looked at them. I never looked at, how much interest or what the total balance was rather than just the minimum due. So for years, I did stuff like that until finally it feels like it was, forever in the making for me to actually sit down and actually take control of it. But, and I'm glad it happened when it did. But it really was just me being frustrated of the fact that I didn't understand why I couldn't stretch my dollars far enough to pay all my bills and also help my parents out and, also be able to have a little spending money. Like it just didn't make sense until finally I was like, all right, this is something that I give. Let me like look at my financial accounts. And it sounds so basic. Like, well, don't you think you should have figured that out sooner? But I think a lot of people just go through the motions. They spend the money, they do the things they need to do, and they don't actually make the time to go through and reconcile their finances or look at their accounts and take a look at these like details around their money.
I mean, I think it's amazing that you actually though were able to do that, because so many I think Americans still haven't been able to do that. And hopefully by listening to our podcast, it's a nice reminder to go in and do that, right?
Yeah, definitely. Mm-hmm.
So I know you also share a story about wearing your sister's Jordans when you were really young. Can you share that story with our listeners?
Yeah. It's such a funny one. Yes. So I'll tell you what happened with that. My sister she's like a year and a half older than I am. So we were raised like my mom treated us as like twins because she had two girls that were very close in age, versus like a lot of my other siblings were like, 10 years older than me, 12 years older than me. So
I can relate with my brother, with my younger brother. Yeah.
Even if you're not twins, like basically you're treated like
matching
twins.
Outfits. I mean,
literally we had for Easter, I would have the pink dress, you'd have the light blue dress. For whatever it was, we would have the same dress with like slightly different pastel colors or whatever it was. But
I still get the same like sweater for Christmas as my brother, like to this day.
Okay, see, that's I'm sorry to you.
We live in different states now, so it's not as like awkward if we're both wearing it.
So for me, thank goodness, it was left behind in my childhood. But my mom was a seamstress. My mom sewed a lot. So growing up, people in the neighborhood would come to her to be like, can you, sew this or that or whatever. And she would make our dresses a lot for our special occasions, communion, confirmation, this kind of, birthday stuff. She would make our dresses. So she always purposefully would buy fabrics that were the same design with slightly different colors and make us the same dress. And yeah, so definitely we were treated like twins. And so I always compared myself to her in a lot of ways, but because she was a little bit older than me, she was able to get her working papers before me. And so in New York City in the 90s and 2000s, working papers, 14 years old, you can start working.
Yep.
So she went and got a job and she was so and it makes sense to start. Like if you feel like 14 years old is like a good age to start working, great, go ahead and do it. But without like talking about the money, what she was doing was just getting her paycheck and just spending it all. Nobody was having a conversation with her about, hey, you could save some of it, you could give some of it away, you could do things, give to charity that you care about, you could invest some of it, you could spend some of it. No, it was just she would get her money and do whatever she wanted. So she went and bought a pair of Jordans. And so she was a freshman in high school. I was in 8th grade and still in middle school. And I wanted a pair of Jordans so bad because I went to a middle school where you had to wear a uniform. So you had to wear a white shirt with like a certain print on the gray skirt. But shoes, there was no rules around footwear. So you could wear whatever shoes you wanted. And so the way you were cool in my middle school was obviously you couldn't stand out with your outfit because we all wore the same uniform. It was all about what was on your feet. So people would wear the brightest colored design sneakers or Timberlands, Nikes, Converse, whatever, was popular at the time. And my mom could never afford any of those brands. So I was always wearing like whatever we got at Payless or whatever was hand-me-downs from my other sisters. And she went and got a brand new pair of Jordans. And so one day she didn't have them on because I forgot what it was. She had a trip or something. She was playing basketball. So she wore another pair of shoes. She didn't wear her brand new Jordans that day. And I saw them under the bed. And I put them on to go to a doctor's appointment. And then after the doctor's appointment, my mom was like, you can go home. You don't have to, school day is pretty much over. And I was like, no, I have to go to school, even if it's just for the last bell period, because I need everyone in my school to see me wearing Jordans on my feet. Like, I need it to be known that I have access to Jordans. Like, they're not even mine, but it was something about, the mentality of being a kid who really wanted so bad to be perceived as popular, to blend in, to fit in with everybody around me, and to be, to wear whatever was cool at the time. And so I wore them, but in my book, I talk about how it was a disastrous day. And I ultimately didn't regret it because even though like I creased them up, my sister found out, she got mad at me. It was a big fight, but I still felt really good about all those little quote unquote friends at my school who saw me wearing Jordans. And for some reason, the high, that I got off of that feeling of being cool for the day, for like one bell period of the day.
I mean, I hear a lot of things in that story. I'm not diagnosing you or anything like that. But I mean, how does that do you think affect your spending and your saving once you started getting a paycheck? Watching your sister go buy those Jordans, buy those other things that you couldn't. I think that probably ties into the first story about growing up and your credit card spending.
Yeah. I mean, and I repeated the same behavior pretty much. Like when I got my first paycheck, I just started doing exactly what she was doing. I would go spend it after school with my friends, either buying food or shopping for clothes and shoes. I pretty much spent my money the exact same way.
Did you get your own Jordans?
I did end up getting my own Jordans. I got the ones, and I ended up getting, and I got two pairs. Actually, the first pair I bought myself, and then the second pair I actually got with money. This is so random, but I went to a concert. Don't tell my parents. I cut school one day, or I left school early. I left school like 2 bell periods early, and I went to Canal Street in Manhattan, and like there was this hidden little area where there was like a secret door. It looked very sketchy, but when we went in, it was like a giant concert, and Usher was performing and Missy Elliott was performing. What? And I like scrounged my way past the crowd, like made it all the way to the front, and Missy Elliott was performing Past That Dutch, which was like the song of the year back in 2004 2005. And she asked who could come up on stage and do the dance from the music video, and whoever's the loudest in the audience to scream, she would call them up to do the dance. And however much money she had in her pocket, she was just going to hand it to us in cash. I screamed so loud. I have a very loud voice. I screamed so loud. She picked on me. My friend and I went up on stage. We did the dance from the music video. And then Missy Elliott pulled out money from her pocket, split it in half, and gave me $175 and gave my other friend $175. And I used that to buy my second pair of Jordans. So there's a fun fact.
What was the second pair? Was it the ones, the fours?
So actually it was the Jordans, the Air Jordans that are like the Nikes, so black, red, and white ones, the classic, the go-to Jordan Nikes. Yeah. So those are the ones I got, and I was obsessed with them. I wore them with everything. Like, it's so weird back in the day. Like, I remember putting outfits on that made no sense, but just because if there was something on it that was red, then I could match it with my red, black, and white Air Jordans. It's like just desperately trying to find a way to excuse wearing the sneakers with every outfit. Yeah, it's so wild to me how, and it's not just Jordan culture. Like, there's a sneakerhead culture. There's this, you're growing up in New York, especially, like Timbs and Nikes and Jordans, like that's what made you cool. But we didn't talk about how it's $200 for a pair of Timbs, $250 sometimes for a pair. I mean, depending on when you're buying them and what kind of sneakers or what kind of, the whatever number it is or release it is, like you could be paying hundreds and hundreds of dollars. And back at that time, I mean, that's like a whole month of groceries for my parents. So and we weren't having these conversations to acknowledge things like that. So of course we just kept putting pressure on our parents. I want this, I want that, without understanding the full context of their financial situation.
I'm curious how, like, once you had that realization with your credit cards and everything, how you kind of flipped that script of, so now what's cool? How do you maintain your coolness now?
Yeah.
while still being, financially savvy?
I love this question. So it didn't happen right then, but a couple years after I started the process of like, completely switching my financial behaviors, I experienced a really bad apartment fire. I didn't have renter's insurance because I didn't know anything about renter's insurance. And I was at work. I got a phone call from one of my roommates who said our apartment's on fire, like the second floor and the first floor both on fire. And so I left work. I ran back to the apartment, and sure enough, somebody had left like a device plugged in and it caught on fire. And I lost pretty much everything, all my stuff. Like whatever I didn't have in my book bag, it was toast. Like my belongings in the apartment that were like decor for like the apartment. So the little the little rug, the lamp, like the mirror, everything that was in my apartment that was just cute, like decor stuff was gone. My bed was completely destroyed. All my clothes in the closet, like everything that I had. And at that time, I think it was just like this moment of like, none of this stuff really matters because I could have died if I was sleeping in that bed during the fire. I have my life. I had like, a couple things in my book bag, like my laptop and some things that I needed. And so I just kind of had a new look at life. And I was like, a lot of stuff doesn't even matter. Like I'm out here trying to show off what I have, for what? Like it could be gone like this. And what really matters is me, and that I'm good, my health, my life. So I became a minimalist after that. That really shifted my approach to how much stuff do I really need to have. And so I don't really have very many things nowadays. Like I have what I need for work, a couple of different outfits that I can, count like how many, and, a couple pairs of shoes I can again count. Like I just try really hard not to over consume now because I recognize that was the problem that led me to financial distress or overconsumption, buying a bunch of stuff that I really didn't need. And also that it kind of distracts me from the stuff that really matters in life, which is my relationships with people that I love, my health, my life. Like it kind of really gave me a new take on life.
A quick word from one of our sponsors, Money Marriage You. Listeners have told us that they love the ideas we share on our podcast to manage money as a team and want to learn more. That is why we created Money Marriage You, self-paced online courses for couples designed by national financial therapy and financial planning experts. You can find our Money Marriage You courses on our website at modernhusbands.com. While visiting modernhusbands.com, be sure to join fellow Modern Husbands as bi-monthly newsletter subscribers and receive great ideas to manage money in the home as a team and a few free gifts. Now back to the show.
Speaking of relationships, tell us a little bit about Jamil.
Yes, my partner, the love of my life. Jamil and I met in 2012. So he went to undergrad at Yale. And when he was at Yale, he felt very much like there wasn't an opportunity for him to find other people that had, the same cultural background as him. He's also Dominican American, son of Dominican immigrants. And so he created a conference called the National Dominican Student Conference, which brings together Dominican American students and even some from the Dominican Republic year after year to talk about, really interesting topics, political topics, education topics, our cultural issues, and, really have important discussions and debates. And then also get to meet influential folks in culture, authors, writers, politicians, musicians, influential folks. So I attended as like a student. I got together a group of students from Brown. We all like got on a bus and went to Connecticut together. And that was my first experience at the conference. I thought was so much fun. And I didn't meet him that year. I just like learned to like really respect, like, hey, somebody like put this event together. This was really cool. I wish I had thought of this myself. And so then the second year I went back as an alum. I had already graduated from Brown and I signed up to help them with like registration and like, all kinds of things, logistics on the back end. And that year I was introduced to Jamil. And he's like, hey, one of the co-founders. And the entire conference. So he came up to me, introduced himself to me, shook my hand, and then walked away. And I didn't talk to him for the whole conference because he was actively avoiding me. Like he purposefully was like creating this mystery. I was like, I was so confused. I'm like, he approached me. So obviously there was some interest, right? He like introduced himself to me. And then for 3 days, the whole conference programming happened. There was like an event, a party, the breakfast, and I didn't talk to him again. So, and then he went on Facebook and sent me a message and was like, it was a pleasure meeting you. I'm like, was it? Because I feel like you were hiding out after you introduced yourself to me. But he claims that, that was part of his his strategy of
Yep.
trying to get me to take
He
interest
had
in
you
him.
thinking about him for 3 days.
Literally, I really was. It's so weird. Anybody out there listening, you trying to get somebody's attention, ignore them. That's how you get their attention, apparently. But yeah, so what
Yanely,
was that?
those Jordans, part of the reason Jordans can be so expensive is scarcity, right? And then
That's
you
right.
got this handsome gentleman, Jamil. By the way, Jamil in Arabic translates to
It,
handsome, right?
Jamil in
What
Jamil
does
in
it
Arabic
transfer
means
to? What is it?
handsome.
What
It
does it
It
means
means like,
translate to?
handsome. Yeah. So that's so true.
and he
It's so
created
true.
that scarcity. I mean, power to him. Power to him. Nicely done.
That is a valid connection. That is a very valid connection. It was so weird to me because at that time we're like in my early 20s, and a lot of the folks at the conference, like you have the nerdy types, like who are there really to get serious into these debates and conversations and to meet some of the influential folks. But really, a lot of people were there looking who can they date, who can they approach, who would look interesting. And so it's funny because I just felt like, how could he just like disappeared? I was like, so he's not interested in me at all. And apparently, it's part of his plan. But so he reached out to me on social media after the event was over, and we connected there. And then, we kind of struck up a friendship. At first, we were just like talking online. He was still in Connecticut, living right off campus, and I was in New York teaching. I really didn't have a lot of spare time, so we were just like talking every now and then. And then when he really stole my heart, when I had a 4th grade class. And at my charter school where I was teaching, every classroom had in the name of a college. My 4th grade class was named after Yale. So, we didn't have the money to travel to Yale on a bus and get the kids to see the campus, but he was right off campus. So he zoomed in super early in the morning. It was like maybe 7:50, 8 a.m. in the morning. And, he was up with crust in his eyes on Zoom to talk to my students about life at Yale and like what it's like to be a student at Yale, and like talk to the kids and answer their questions. And it was the sweetest thing. So
Sweet.
yeah, we've been together ever since. And not that it's been the easiest of every relationship obviously takes work, but honestly 99.9% of the time, we're happy-go-lucky. Everything's really, we're a very positive couple. Like everything, even when we have issues or problems, we kind of resolve them from a place of love. And that's something I really appreciate with him compared to other relationships that I've been in that can get negative really quickly when you don't agree on things. But we have just a really nice the way that we communicate. We have a really nice form of communication to problem solve through things together.
Do you agree on how you all spend when I say spend money, I guess it'd be more like, money's a tool to buy experiences or buy like where you two live together, whatever. Do you two jive pretty naturally when it comes to that?
Oh, this is a great question. So when we first started dating, I think everything was just 50-50. And we didn't really even talk about this. Like it just happened that way, where we both approached everything as like, hey, this is what's fair. And we just split everything. When we go out to dates, when we go, whatever we do, we split things 50-50.
Okay.
We both are not gift givers. And the funny thing, so when we first started dating, we both felt pressure to buy each other something for Valentine's Day and then for each other's birthdays. And it was just the first year. So this was like 2012, 2013. I'm like, what do I get him? And he was also like racking his brain. What the heck do I get her? And then a couple years in, we took the love languages test.
Okay.
We did the quiz with like those 5 love languages. And neither one of us had gifts in our top 4. Like there's only 5 love languages. And for both of us, the 5th one was gift giving or receiving gifts. So we realized like, why have we been again, it's like this social pressure. It's like you just kind of do what you think you're supposed to do. You're supposed to be seen in Jordans. You're supposed to buy this. You're supposed to spend money on that.
Materialistic culture that's just driven home for us.
Especially with like the holidays, right? Like Valentine's Day, and then you have, and then birthdays, and then all these money. So, and we're both very simple people, so we're both like, all right, let's just cut this out. Like we don't care about don't get me anything, and he's like, yeah, don't get me anything either. So we don't really spend money on gifts. We split most things. Now, a couple years ago, Jamil was making significantly more money than me. Now he works in computer science, so he's a programmer, he does coding, and that kind of work, you're highly paid. As soon as you land a job in tech, you're pretty much making six figures right out of college. So he was making way more money than me for many years of our relationship. And only until recently that started to shift, because I have so many different income streams now, right? So because I have way more opportunities for me to make money, I'm not just, working my one job, and that has shifted things a little bit. So what we've done is we have actually done everything that we split as a percentage. So instead of saying we split 50-50 just because that's fair, what we see as fair is that the person that brings in more money should pay a little bit higher of a percentage towards the fixed expenses. And then everything that's like we do for fun, there we do split things. So if we're going to see Barbie and Oppenheimer, which we did together, we split those tickets 50-50, versus if we're paying rent, we split it based on the percentage of the income that we each bring.
But did your mom sew Jamil like some nice pair of slacks or something for the Barbie Oppenheimer premiere, or?
No, I wore like a pink top and regular jeans. I didn't dress up too much, but I did wear pink. He was not about that life. He was like, no, I'm not. I'm going to show up and watch it, but don't you expect me to show up in a Ken outfit. It's not happening.
I love the fact that like there's so many different ways that you can cut up how you decide to spend money and manage money as a couple, right?
Yes.
I mean, the best way is just the best way for you. And sounds like you two, you keep it separate, but you continually have conversations about money to make sure you're on the same page, and you figured out a way to make that relationship and money work really symbiotically, and that allows you to feel like that there's more fairness in the relationship. And that's one of the common questions that we get is like, how do people manage money together? So thanks for sharing that. And I probably should share on Jamil's behalf. Thanks for not making him wear a Ken outfit.
No, I wouldn't. I'm honestly like, I think a very logical person. I wasn't always that way. I think I was very highly emotional earlier on in my life. And then as things just, life experiences come your way and things, you really start to learn like, okay, when I think this way, it doesn't serve me. So let me change my thinking. And so I've become a lot more logical in terms of when I'm trying to solve problems. If we're having a debate, for example, I'm not just trying to win. I'm not trying to be right. I'm actually trying to find out what's the solution so we can, both come out of this better. And I think that's how we approach money too, right? We never have had a joint account up until very recently. We created a joint checking account for our fixed expenses, and we both have a set amount, which is the percentage of our combined income that we each bring in. We have to put that percentage on a monthly basis into our checking account. So then from that checking account, everything gets paid. The rent gets paid out of there. The bills, our phone bills, our electric bill, gas, whatever, everything comes out of there. And that has made it so much easier, because before we had everything separate, and whoever paid the bill would have to request, the other half from the other person. And that was just so annoying. So it finally got to the point where we're like, for convenience sake, let's create that joint account. But we actually both agree, like, we aren't married. We don't really have interest in getting married in the short term. And so we've really just been planning our life around this like non-traditional approach to our relationship. Our families are not happy about that, but it works for us. And, and it ultimately kind of plays out with our money too. So my checking account, my savings account have nothing to do with him. His checking account, his savings account have nothing to do with me. And then we just have this one joint account where we make sure that everything that we're responsible for together is always paid, and we don't have issues with that. And that, and that works for us. I definitely agree with you, Brian, about like the beauty of every relationship being different and having its own way and approach of dealing with money. I have so many different siblings. One of my sisters is like, I don't know how you guys do that. That would drive me crazy. I need all of our money in one account. I need to keep my eye on everything. And I'm like, why? Like, to me, that just doesn't make sense. I'm not going to drive myself crazy running my fingers through all the transactions that we made, asking questions about every purchase. Like, that's not the life I want to live. That's not the relationship I want to be in. So, like you said, to each their own. And I do think that every partnership should create a unique method that works for you and that helps you thrive and makes you happy at the end of the day.
And you all have, you obviously manage your own investments, like for retirement and credit building for credit cards, but who manages the actual fixed expenses, the bills, like the water bill and the rent and whatever?
Yeah.
How do you do that?
So yeah, so it comes out of our joint account together. So we established we established accounts together. Then we log into our account, and Jamil kind of did this, where when we moved into this new apartment. So it kind of, I guess, like alternated. So when we lived in our old apartment in New York City before we moved, I logged in and I set everything up on auto pay to make sure that everything would come out. When we moved here to Miami, about 2 years ago now, he logged in, he set up like the portal, username, password thing, logged in and made sure that everything was set up on auto pay. So the beauty of setting it up once and that's it, forgetting it, is you set it and forget it. Kind of like your investments, we don't have to think about it every month. We just get an email saying, hey, rent's going to come out. Hey, next, your electric bill's going to come out in 2 days. And as long as we've both been doing that auto contribution, we don't really have to worry about our bills. They're always going to be paid automatically. And we both have equal access to the checking account just to make sure things are looking right. But yeah, we ultimately don't really have one person in charge of anything. But I will say Jamil doesn't necessarily feel, he doesn't always feel super confident making the decisions without asking me, which I kind of love, because it's definitely the reverse of your typical relationship. But he will come up to me and be like, all right, so should I keep contributing to my 401k if they're not going to give me a match? And I'm like, oh, okay, that's a good one. Let's talk about it. Like, so he's not just going to go make a decision. He'll bring it up for us to talk about, which I appreciate.
Yeah, that's super healthy.
Yeah,
it also helps.
And I think it takes time.
It wasn't
always like that
in managing money, so that's kind of handy for him.
a money nerd for sure. I don't know about expert. There's things I'm learning all the time, and these things change all the time too. Like,
you have to just recently learn.
Yeah, I mean, all the time. Like recently, I was telling him that I'm not a big fan of 529 plans, and then literally like the Secure 2.0 Act came out and I'm like, wait, what? You can now flip your 529 that you don't use into a Roth? Oh, for sure. I'm a big fan now. Yeah. So like you just kind of have to always stay up to date with these things because they change all the time.
Are you engaged, recently married, or know someone who is? We are empowering engaged and recently married couples who want to manage money and the home as a team with a transition to marriage toolkit. Learn more at modernhusbands.com. Now back to the show.
How do you, and I've seen how you and Jamil support each other in your health and fitness goals. Like you have your Oura, or however you say it, Oura rings, and you encourage each other on the progress that you're making and like hold each other accountable for your fitness goals. How does that translate into career and money support for one another?
Yeah. Oh, I love this question. So I think there's seasons to this. There was a time where, Jamil was building an app for some time. He was building a Slack app, which, has all these features for people that like to use Slack. And it's a lot of work to create an application from scratch. I mean, you're literally writing the code to run an entire application. So, and I don't know how to do that. So I'm like, woof, it's in my mind, it's like, neuro surgeon over here. I'm like, this is, I can't do that, and he was working long hours, late nights. And this was on top of his full-time job in tech. So like, there were times where I had to cook for both of us. I had to check in on him. I had to like, hey, are you good? Are you okay? Do you need me anything? Do you need feedback from me? Do you want me to like test this and see how it looks and feels? And he did. He needed a lot of that from me during that time. And, once he put that out and it's, started to be successful, it's great. Things shifted a little bit and he could kind of pull back away from that and kind of his schedule settled down a bit more. And then my schedule started taking off, like my speaking gigs. I started to get more speaking engagements. I'm being booked more to travel and speak. And there were times where like it was a lot and I wouldn't see him. And so he'd be like, listen, do you want me to just come with you to your speaking events? I work remotely. There's no reason why I can't work from the hotel and we can, take this trip together. And I really appreciate him for that because I feel like you don't realize how much of a toll it takes on you when you're away from your routines and like just your like just being home and having things the way you like them for so long until I started like traveling all the time. And I'm like, oh man, like at first travel seemed so cool and like I was excited about it. And now I'm like, dang, like it really interrupts my whole routine and I just really want to be back home. So him coming along with me, helping me just maintain my schedule, challenging me to keep up with things even when I'm not home and just being there for support. It's funny, recently I did a speaking engagement in Miami actually, so in our backyard now. And the audience, somebody asked me from the audience, like, how do I balance so many things? Like if you're on social media, then you also work at NGPF and then you also have a book and you're speaking and there's a lot and you have your family and your partner and all these things. And I said, I have to attribute it to my partner Jamil, because he has been so supportive and forces me almost to kind of like take a break and just do 20 minutes where I'm not thinking about anything, and I'm just, like really centering myself, and then approaching things one task at a time. Okay, what's the most important thing? How long is that going to take? Focus on that for the next 30 minutes until it's done, and then move on to the next. You can only control but so much, and you really have to kind of prioritize and just focus to get things done. And what doesn't get done, hey, it doesn't get done, but you can't drive yourself into the wall stressing about things. And I really learned that from him, because it wasn't serving me, and he recognized that. And so I mentioned that, and this entire audience of like hundreds of people gave him a standing ovation. Like, they just started to clap for him, and he was in the back, and he was so red. I mean, looked like he had blush on his cheeks. He was like, he didn't know how to react to it. And it's so funny, later on in the night, that evening, I said, oh my gosh, was that amazing? Everybody gave you a round of applause. How did you feel? He's like, was I supposed to wave or something? Like, I just didn't know what I was supposed to do. And I was like so nervous. And he's like, I don't know how you do your job. Like, you got all these people's attention, and you're keeping their attention for so long. Like, I don't know how you do what you do. And I'm like, well, that's what makes us a good partnership. I don't know how he does what he does. Like, I don't. And so, but we gel and we work well. It's like the yin and yang. And having him support me, in this work is really the only reason why I'm able to do so much. I would literally not be able to do so much. There's days where I'm in here in my little studio recording all day. It would be 5 o'clock. I haven't eaten a thing. And I open the door, in my head, I'm thinking I'm starving. And as soon as I open the door, he's standing there with a plate of food. How did he know? Like, and it just, and again, it's like seasons, where there's times where I have to do that for him, times where he does it for me. So I definitely, visually, there's apparent ways that he supports me. And then there's things in the background, which I always appreciate him for.
You both have such just a healthy mindset about just relationship. It's inspiring. It's awesome. I mean, you both deserve rounds of applause and standing ovations. Can't really stand on the podcast, but we can. We'll give you the round of applause.
Yeah, I think the more I talk to people, especially a lot of my friends that are single now, like, I have a niece who's about the age I was when I met Jamil, and she's always complaining to me about how hard it is to find a partner and stuff these days. And I'm like, I gotta admit that it seems like it's harder now than ever. That is true. With so many apps, you would think that it's easier, but it for some reason it is so much harder now, because things are so much more overcomplicated than they need to be. Having a connection with somebody, it either happens naturally or it doesn't. But we overcomplicate things by putting a bajillion questions on these apps and trying to dig deep. At first, you just need to know if there's a natural connection, right? We try to dig so deep so quickly. And Jamil and I mean, we've been together over 10 years, going on 11 years now. And people are always shocked about things, regarding us. So why aren't you married yet? Or, all these different questions that we get. And I'm like, I got to tell you, we are happier than almost every couple that I see in my family, that I know personally, that my friends that I have that are married, that are miserable. And we're so happy. So let's stop trying to constantly go so deep into things, and just let them naturally be what they are. And if people are happy and you enjoy the partnership that you have, to me, that's really what matters. So, when you say we both deserve standing ovations, I appreciate that. We have both put in a lot of work into the relationship, but I also recognize that we met during a time where it was significantly easier, I think, to have the opportunity to make a connection with somebody, and then go deeper, and not feel so much pressure to go deep so quick.
Right. I'm right there with you, Yanely. I mean, when you feel that sense of luck and privilege to be with the person that you are with, and luck and privilege that you met that person when you met them, without all the complications of modern apps and technology and keeping up with the Joneses on a, cellular phone level. Yeah. It makes you even more grateful.
Definitely does, for sure. Absolutely. And just that level of maturity. I mean, I find that for example, my cousin the other day, he's probably maybe 25 26, 27. And he texted me the other day randomly, and he's like, hey, I have a question for you. I hope it's not too personal, but how do you and Jamil, handle money? Like, do you split everything? Does he pay for everything? And I told him, I said, hey, we split everything based on our income. So if 1 year Jamil makes more money, he's going to pay more of a portion of the rent. If the next year I make more money, then that year I'm going to be paying more of a portion of the rent, but we try to make it proportional to what we're bringing in. And he said, oh my goodness, there's no way I'm ever going to find a girl like who thinks like that. Like, I can't. Like, every girl that I've dated and all the girls I'm meeting, like, they just say that I have to pay for everything because I'm the man. And I reckon, I'm like, that's, you're talking to people who have been taught to believe these very traditional approaches to relationships and to partnerships, especially heteronormative ones. So you have to be prepared to, in a healthy way, try to challenge the thinking and push back and ask questions and see, why can't it be another way though? Like, what if we approached it a different way that worked for us? Or what if you thought about it this way? And, I could tell he was just like struggling. He's struggling with that as like, in his mid-20s, trying to date, and he's in New York City. So it's like, he feels like this is the time to be meeting people, but for some reason can't find somebody who agrees with his approach. And, and I recognize that it's not something that's so easy to talk about in the first few dates. So it usually doesn't come up until a little while into the relationship. And then at that point, you're like, oh, I put so much effort into it. Now it's like, you kind of fall for all the different biases, and oh man, I've already put in so much time, maybe I should just stay with her, even though we clearly disagree on all the fundamental aspects of these things. And so I can see, I think that younger generations now struggling with trying to find a relationship that's harmonious and that works in a way that they feel like it works for them, and not just for one partner versus the other, but that it works for both partners.
What are 3 essential ideas from your book they need to hear that can improve their lives?
Ooh, okay. I love this question. The first one is going to be your mindset. The book is called Mind Your Money, because before you can get to the money, you have to really address your mindset around money. So in the first chapter, I kind of tell my story a little bit, acquaint you with my life and my approach to this. And in the end, I'm literally pointing to my mind on the cover. Yes. But the second chapter, which is my favorite, is all about these mental biases that we fall prey to when it comes to thinking about money and making decisions with money. And for me, that's the number one key takeaway from the book, is that no matter, you wake up today deciding, I'm not spending money today. I don't need to. There's nothing that I need. I'm going to be home all day. There's no reason for me to spend money. And by 2:00, you've already bought something on Instagram, and you saw it on something else on TikTok. So
it's all the way on the phone now, it's easy.
It's so easy on the phone. It's so quick on the phone, and also the way that they understand the way the human mind works, and they're able to take advantage of that in ways that we have no, we can't even fend for ourselves, because it's almost like mind control. It's a little scary. And so in that chapter, I talk about how I got to a point where I realized and recognize that I don't want anybody else controlling my mind. It's kind of like abusing drugs. Like you lose control of your mind in a way that's really scary. And that kind of is what happens when somebody else convinces you to do things with your money that don't align with the way that you envisioned yourself spending your money. And so I think that just this awakening, like for especially younger generations, Gen Z, Gen Alpha and beyond, is that we're now in the new technological era where the tools that we're using to access the internet, to communicate, there are powerful algorithms on there that have more control over your brain than you do. And this is the new normal. If you're born in a generation where you've been seeing iPhones and iPads in people's hands since you were born, like, it seems so normal to you. It's very normalized to you. But we have to pull back and approach this from a place of, it's not normal. It is not normal for a company to have every tiny detail about my life and everything that I do on my devices, so that they can use that information against me to convince me to spend money on a day when I didn't have any intention of spending money. So I think the mental part of being able to essentially protect your mindset and develop a strong money mindset to resist against constant temptation is the number one most important thing for this next generation, and that I want them to get from my book. The second thing that I would want them to get is just these tactical tips, right? Which is, you just gonna have to understand how banking works. Like, if you don't understand how banking works, you're gonna freak out when Silicon Valley Bank goes under and then, eventually gets bought and comes back like a rising phoenix. I don't really understand what happened, but you're gonna start to really freak out when you don't understand what underpins the financial systems in our country and globally. So just basic knowledge of systems like banking, credit, investments, that you kind of just got to learn it. It's like you're going to sit at the table and play Monopoly. Well, then you better know the rules. Otherwise, you're going to lose. So you just kind of got to learn these rules around money systems in our country. And I kind of have a chapter for each one. So like banking and then investing, credit, just learn those basics. And then the third thing I want them to get is that this isn't a selfish thing. I think the reason why so many people don't like talking about money is because it feels selfish. It feels like if you say you want money, you're selfish. If you say you want more money, you're even more selfish. I mean, talking about money openly, it's seen as a taboo because it's connected to these ideas of being greedy or being selfish. And we just have to disassociate those things from each other because it's not true. Just because I'm talking about money doesn't mean I'm a selfish person. Money can be this very community-oriented thing, bringing money back to your community through initiatives, through education, through empowerment, and bringing knowledge back to help other people and to provide security for your family. That's not selfish. So I want people to understand that at the end of the book, the number one call to action from me in the book is pass this on, pay it forward. Now that you sort of have a responsibility to pass it forward to someone else, pay it forward and pass it on to people who maybe wouldn't otherwise understand this stuff unless you kind of, put this book in their hand or put a podcast like this one before them and share resources with them to empower them to learn it. Because most people who are already out of school didn't get it in school, unfortunately. That's starting to change now. But before, the 2010s wasn't really taught in school. And now we're starting to really see this personal responsibility. You have this much credit card debt, it's your fault. If you have student loans, it's your fault. If you can't pay off your car loan, that's on you. And I really don't think it's all on individuals when systemically, like we're not taking responsibility for making sure that everybody has the right tools and access to information to make informed choices. So I do feel like the third thing in the book is like, let's pass this on. Let's take this knowledge and fill ourselves up and our own cups up, but then also pour into other people so that everybody has a fair shot at thriving financially and not just the people who have the privilege or the opportunity to access it.
I have read your book. It's amazing. I want everyone to read it, everyone on earth, preferably. So that we can, fill each other's cups here. Where can people buy the book?
Yes. Okay. So you can go to mindyourmoneybook.com and there'll be a link there to buy it. It's available really pretty much anywhere too. So Barnes & Noble, Thrift Books, Amazon, wherever you get books. Mind Your Money. And I'm going to be doing a book tour in the fall of 2023. So really excited about that. We're going to be traveling to community colleges, universities, schools, high schools, and just really promoting this conversation around money. And so, you follow me online or social media, anywhere, you'll see different places where I'll be traveling to. And if there's a local one in your area, definitely come by. I think the encouragement that people get from leaving a room where they just felt confident having a conversation about money is what we want to, kind of spread. But yeah, so if it starts with the book, you can get it at mindyourmoneybook.com.
Thanks so much for coming today, Yanely. This was a great conversation.
Yes, thanks for having me, friends. This was so much fun.
A special thanks to our guest and, of course, to all of our listeners. Don't forget to click subscribe wherever you download your podcast, give us a rating, and share the Modern Husbands podcast with others. Doing so goes a long way in growing our reach. And join your fellow modern husbands and have links to our podcasts, articles, and other resources to manage money in the home as a team sent to your inbox every 2 weeks by subscribing to our newsletter at modernhusbands.com. Until next time, be well.